So lots coming your way then. We're going to start at the Emirates, where the pressure has been ramped up a little bit on title-chasing Arsenal. That's after Liverpool moved 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League yesterday. They take on the champions Manchester City this afternoon. And Gail Davis is there for us now. Pretty cold there, I should say so, at the moment. But good morning to you, Gail. Nice to see you. You've interviewed Mikel Arteta, haven't you? Look, loads during his time at the club. Does his kind of attitude or way that he speaks to you change at all ahead of a huge game?
Really good morning to you, Vicky. You get the sense on those big occasions ahead of the really big games, he just wants to get it done. And Friday proved a case in point. I think I timed it about 9.5 minutes for the whole press conference. He had various other commitments to do afterwards. But it was so business as usual, put on that very calm persona. And it was so far removed from what we saw when these two sides met, didn't we, in September. That was a game that really had it all. So much so I had to check the scoreline because of the incidents that followed and the fallout from the game. The likes of Gabriel saying, we can't wait to get them back to our place, having had the ball in the back of his head by Haaland. There was also the stay humble comments and the I know what they do from Arteta as well, as Pep declared war. And it was, I think, a step away from that is what Arteta was trying to say. What he was trying to project. He says that he doesn't believe in that sort of negativity. He wants to just go out and play football. But we all know, don't we, this is going to be anything but normal this afternoon. That's how we describe this rivalry, because it's huge for Arsenal. If they simply have to win today to have any chance of chasing down Liverpool. And perhaps bigger than that, they've got a huge week with the Carabao Cup as well on Wednesday night. And if they are to go and do something pretty miraculous in going up to Newcastle and overturning that 2-0 deficit, they need the confidence and the belief that a performance like today could give them. And that's why it's so key for them. And that's why I think he just thinks heads right. Not going to give you anything away. And I had a go at trying to find out exactly what Raya's injury was, because that's the really, really big team news, isn't it? And muscular injury was as far as I got, and that was on the third time of asking.
Well, at least you tried. Thank you, Gail, as always. Look, we've got an interview with the Arsenal duo, William Saliba and Gabriel, a little bit later this hour, and an extended chat with Pep Guardiola from 11 o'clock. So we're going to start with Liverpool, who passed their latest test with flying colours, didn't they? They overcame an informed Bournemouth side 2-0 to go 9 points clear at the top. And Darren, many would have seen this, and most of them are Arsenal fans, as a place that they could have dropped points. They didn't. And he rested a lot of their players, didn't he, midweek? And that was a bit of a gamble. So it paid off, didn't it, for Arsenal, you'd have to say?
Paid off massively. And the benefit of them doing as well as they've done in the Champions League is the reason why they were able to rest so many of their players. They needed them fit and firing as well, because Bournemouth are the hardest working team in the Premier League. They've done superbly well under Areola. They've taken some huge scalps at their own place as well. And even though they have those 9 players, we keep seeing those shots of them in the TV studio looking down. There is so much quality in that team. So they needed some unforced errors, some mistakes. We are now all agreed that was a penalty. And this is the guy who always delivers from the spot, from open play. Mo Salah with ice in his veins to score the first goal and to break Bournemouth's spirit. I think as far as they are concerned, they also needed the win, because obviously Arsenal still do have that squeak, that ability to catch them up. But in tight moments against top teams, you need that touch of class. What about that, Paul?
Yeah, do you know, every time, I've said this many times, any time I interview Liverpool players, and just I love to get a bit of insight from them into what it's like to play with Mo Salah or be a teammate of Mo Salah. And they all say the same things, that not just about his ability, but the fact that he's in the gym first before everybody else. Is the standards he sets off the pitch are just on that level. And that's why you've got like Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, the real leaders in the team. It's a nice blend on that Liverpool side of the younger players, somewhere in the tier in between, and then Van Dijk, Salah, Alisson, these leaders, and yeah, they've just got a nice blend. And that was a big test. I did think, said 2 weeks ago here, that the February games were going to be crucial, especially those away games, Bournemouth, Everton and Man City this month away from home. Well, there's one of those 3 away games down, and it is a tough one that they have got out of the way. So impressive. If they do the same in the Merseyside derby and against Manchester City, it's really hard to look past them.
Just
Yes,
a quick word on Salah, because obviously he's now, 178 league goals. He's 6th on the all-time list in the Premier League era, ahead of Frank Lampard on 177. Top scorer in the league at the moment, 20 goals in 5 top-flight campaigns. Only Shearer, Aguero and Kane have done it more times. Still no new contract for him. And it looks as though Liverpool are going to hold their nerve and say, listen, it makes fiscal sense for us to enjoy your class, your genius, your brilliance one last time, but then to move on. I'm not going to sit here and say it's a huge gamble anymore, because we've seen lots of clubs do it, push the ball out for big players. And sometimes those players, once that deal is signed, there is a drop-off. And Liverpool, very much a club that looks at the numbers, the data, very forward-thinking. And I'm not going to say that from his point of view, it wouldn't be anything other than a massive, massive loss if they were to lose him, because he is pure gold. It's fascinating. Obviously, the door's not closed either way as things stand, but it will be fascinating to see how it does play out, because we've just seen 2 really good examples of why a Mo Salah in your team is worth his weight in gold. But we've also seen in Premier League history, teams lose big players and survive. We've seen that I was actually going to use Tottenham as an example.
You
it's probably not the best example, because obviously but because of where they might be low.
They did initially, didn't they?
But they are a relatively free-scoring team. But there are other examples in Premier League history of clubs that have lost players who can score goals for fun, but have still been able to survive and move on.
Paul, do you think we might see that contract tied up maybe tomorrow? Could that be a real fillip for kind of Liverpool, who kind of haven't done much business, fair to say, in this window? Might we see that tomorrow?
I don't know if Liverpool take that much notice of all the noise around them, because they've got a very set way of doing things. And I always look on with admiration at Liverpool and what they do in the transfer market, and they spend within their means, they plan, you can't argue with too many of the players they've brought in, and how consistently they've been in the mix for the top trophies over the last few years. So I always think, no matter who's in the recruitment team at various points and who does what, it always seems very impressive with Liverpool. So I don't necessarily think that they get drawn in to all of that, you just need to keep people happy just because there's a bit of noise. I think they back what they're doing, and on this occasion, they don't need a contract announcement to keep everyone happy, because the football's doing that at the moment.
Yeah,
at the top of the league. So I agree with Darren that maybe I think it kind of goes on a bit longer until such times that they realise that they can come to an agreement, or they find that middle ground, and I think that'll just take as long as it takes.
OK. What are the papers saying, Darren, about yesterday's game?
Right, I'm going to show you the Observer first. By the way, Brentford. Brentford's a really good example. It was really eating away at me. I had to give you an example. And obviously, Brentford's well 5 and Ivan Tony, Uwissa and Mbuemo were scoring goals for fun. So thank you.
You pulled that back.
Take a look at this. This is Jonathan Wilson in the Observer. And it's a terrific piece, because he talks about Liverpool's skill at being able to, it's what the headline says right there, make informed opponents look ordinary. This was their 6th 2-0 win of the campaign so far. And what he says is that they're very good at closing games out. They take a lead and then they, at times they ride their luck, and it has to be said they did ride their luck at times yesterday, but they manage games so well and they're so accustomed to it. The balance in the team is such that they've got that defensive skill, organisation, and obviously we've been talking all about Mo Salah just now, but they have other players as well. Gakpo's been in terrific form so far this season. Jota actually is their best striker and he doesn't even start regularly at the moment. They've got so much quality. But this is a really good piece because it isn't just gushing about Liverpool. It tells you why they're so good, what it is about them that enables them to be able to establish the lead that doesn't look as though it's going to be caught. Obviously, in the Premier League, you can never say never. We've seen many times in the recent past that big leads can be whittled away. But Jonathan's saying that there is more to Liverpool than just the glitz and the glamour.
OK, it's interesting because you talk about, more to them than just the glitz and the glamour. Obviously, we do know that Richard Hughes, is now in charge of getting these players in. And before the game, Arne Slot referenced Richard Hughes a lot for the job that he did at Bournemouth, which I thought was quite interesting. Was it a sort of subtle, message to all those people that might be doubting him in terms of the contract situations that are playing out at the moment? Do you think that was part of Slot's
possibly,
idea there?
Possibly, just a reminder of just how good and talented his team behind the scenes can be. Because I was at the Bournemouth Nottingham Forest game last week, just saw firsthand of that Bournemouth side and the team and squad that's been assembled, and it is highly impressive.
And bringing in Areola as well, didn't he?
Exactly, yeah. So they've got, even with that, even more so in the middle of that injury crisis, when we've seen how injury crisis has impacted on other clubs like Tottenham, for example, whereas with Bournemouth, they've, I think at one point, the 12 or 13 senior players, and still close to that.
Injury crisis?
Exactly, yeah, they're doing it. And then obviously lost yesterday, but the way they dismantled Nottingham Forest was so impressive. So, Richard Hughes clearly has that talent for identifying players and managers and bringing it all together. And the other thing I like about Liverpool, when you compare it to somewhere like Chelsea, for example, I think average age, Chelsea, youngest team in the division this season. You maybe see that at times, whereas with Liverpool, I've mentioned it before, just that balance in the side as well. So to me, that's part of the skill as well. You need to have the team that I did an interview with Enzo Maresca that's going to run tomorrow, where he talks about Chelsea needing to be more nasty. Well, Liverpool have already got all of those things. Their game management, the way they control games, as you mentioned there, after taking the lead.
Yeah.
All those experienced players mixed with the younger players do have that kind of impact on a team. So I think the way that when they bring a younger player into their first team, as we've seen with Liverpool over the last couple of seasons, they're coming into a really settled, ready-made environment where they're already, the standards are already set, and I think that's what we're seeing. And I think a lot of those guys behind the scenes are contributing to that.
And Mo Salah, obviously one of the most experienced players that they've got there at the moment. The more this plays out, though, and the fact that Saudi really seem to want him, do you feel it's less likely that he's going to stay at Liverpool? How do you see it playing?
If you're asking me personally, I think yes. I think the longer this goes on, the more I think to myself, particularly given the huge deal that Liverpool rejected a couple of years ago from Saudi, when there was time on Salah's contract, and now we're into the last 6 months. There still has been no resolution as yet, and I would imagine the confidence will grow that they can land what for them, what for world football really, would be a monster coup when you consider the way Salah lives his life, the fantastic physical condition he's in, the attitude that he takes into every game, the cutting edge he provides for every team. He could go to any one of the big teams in Europe, and I'm talking about the superpowers, and yet it could well be that they put the deal on the table that says to him, I may as well go there now because I've done all there is to do, particularly if Liverpool were to win the Champions League as well as the Premier League. And of course they've finished top of, I don't want to call it a Super League because it's not supposed to, but it's Super League, isn't it?
He said that, not me.
But all the joking aside, I mean, for Liverpool, it would be a huge loss, as I say, not just because he's a fantastic player, but he gets the club, the fans, he's loved, he's admired. He's an ambassador for the Premier League. He's the best player in Africa. There are so many reasons why, beyond the goals, Salah would be a loss for this country's top division. But the longer this goes on, it is all only pointing in one direction.
OK, and in terms of today's game, how much pressure does that victory for Liverpool yesterday put on Arsenal now, do you think?
A lot, and always gets the second half of the season, and squads have to respond to what the rivals do, and we get to that stage where we're talking about which team plays first and which in a weekend and which team plays second. So of course with Liverpool playing first and getting a win, not just any old win, but a win against one of the league's most formed sides, that clearly has an impact on the team that's chasing, because they're just kind of, right, they've done that way. That's one of the games we thought that they could drop points. So Arsenal have to respond, and not just respond, but in a game like the one against Manchester City, and Gail mentioned it, the stay humble and all the fallout from the last game, all that, it's gonna take a big kind of physical and mental effort to get a result there. The one thing I'd say about Arsenal in terms of, they're obviously on a bit of an unbeaten run in the league, and they dug out that win last week at Wolves, kept a clean sheet, and
they showed a different side to themselves, didn't
exactly, and they can do that. And I think that the teams that have lost to City recently have, like Chelsea last week, have been a bit more open, and Arsenal can adapt and be a bit more solid defensively, and maybe hit Manchester City on the counter-attack quite a bit. And you would think they have a good chance today, but it is a game with Manchester City showing signs of just getting back to form that, yeah, it's the type of fixtures this weekend have just aligned, and there's a lot of pressure on
there is
Arsenal
pressure on them. And I saw a stat when I was looking at a few things ahead of the show that really did strike me. The clean sheet that Arsenal kept last weekend means that if they were to keep one today, it would be the first time since August in the Premier League that they've kept back-to-back clean sheets. That's quite striking. I know you've spoken, you've talked all about the interview we've got coming up with Saliba and Gabriel. They've been so sensational for Arsenal since they arrived at the club, particularly as a partnership. But when you look at the standards that have fallen defensively at Arsenal, and you've got to say the recruitment's been fantastic in that area to make sure they're never again in a situation they were a couple of years ago when Saliba was lost and the title was lost because of his absence. But this time around, they're just missing something in that back line, which says to me that today, City, who are resurgent in terms of the final third, could take advantage. No team has scored more goals since Christmas than City's 18 in the Premier League.